So, as we were saying a minute ago, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute.
You and I,
I did not check when the last one went up because I was too afraid to see how long it's been.
you and me both, buddy. I'm not willing to look that up, but
you know what? It's easier to just assume it's only been like 2 months as opposed to like the 5 it's probably been.
yeah, I think it might be 5 to 6.
Yeah.
Look, I mean, as we both know, you and I have both independently had very busy lives, and both of us have gotten sick multiple times in that period.
Yeah.
I know I had a couple of things that both left me with like 2 to 3 weeks of like lasting side effects that prevented me from being able to use my voice properly.
I went on a short like trip to another state for a convention and just meeting up with friends, and then I was out of commission for like a month and a half. I still do not know what I exactly had, but it knocked me on my ass in a way I've never felt in my entire life.
I mean, I myself, like maybe a month ago, got sick with something that definitely wasn't COVID, but it certainly wasn't nothing.
No, exactly.
And it is only within like the last week or so that I've had control of my sinuses again.
Oh yeah, like up until like January, I was still having like sinuses and snot issues. It was brutal.
So that's why it's been a minute.
I guess you could say we're over the hill of it now.
Or all the intro music that I stole from the show. We finished off season 1.
We did.
We did.
I'm glad that I will say that I'm always glad that shows tend to have shorter first seasons, because God, if we had to do 24 episodes of this, not that I'm saying that we wouldn't do it, but man, would it feel kind of a stretch.
I think it would be kind of hard for us to want to keep going if our first bout with it was like 24 episodes.
Yeah, but I mean it's
12.
It's also
it's tight.
It's also a show that is not like, it's not so constant and fast paced where it feels like there's so much to keep up on. Like if we were trying to do this for like Family Guy or The Simpsons, other than the fact that those have insanely high numbers of like episodes,
yeah.
Just the way those are written would be a nightmare to try and like parse out where you wanted to stop, because I feel like King of the Hill has good ways to section off a bunch of episodes, because they're very slow, but they're very funny.
I think they don't suffer a problem that I see in Family Guy, in that the jokes are piled on so like shortly after one another that there's not much to say about them.
Yeah.
Whereas King of the Hill gives you a good moment to think about it most of the time. It feels like there should be a laugh track, but they don't, and I appreciate it.
I think that's to its like favor, because it was to the point where we had initially wanted to do the next 3 episodes a couple months ago, and obviously we said like everything fell apart. But when I went back and watched those 3 episodes again just a day or two ago to refresh myself, I didn't find myself like, oh, these jokes I'm listening to the same jokes. They were still funny a second time. It's just it's the delivery and the writing that keeps it like, even though you've heard the jokes, there's still the way the characters say it that make it great.
And it's almost astonishing how quickly they've gotten their joke pacing down in season 1 alone. It was a little bit shaky earlier on in the season, but by God, in these last 6 episodes, it feels like they've really found their pace.
The first couple episodes are very, I wouldn't say they're unfunny, but they're very dry and serious in a lot of places. And it's not to say that these episodes also don't have serious moments, but
yeah,
it feels like they've taken the sort of dry, snide humor that they were going for and really like leaned into it at this point to pretty good effect.
I wonder if earlier in the season, and we talked about this a little bit, that they were maybe going for a slightly more early Simpson-esque like family values at the end of it.
Right.
These last 6 episodes, with maybe 1 or 2 exceptions, they dropped that almost entirely.
Well, because knowing the network Fox that made this show, or at least produced it, they were always chasing the next big Simpsons, and everything had to be Simpsons. Yes. Everything had to be the next nuclear family, which I don't think King of the Hill has ever tried to replicate. I've never felt that King of the Hill was ever like a clone of the Simpsons, not even close.
No. Although, that actually brings up a point, something that I found while doing a bit of minor research. Do you know what the eventual cause of King of the Hill's cancellation was?
No, what happened?
Why Fox finally put it down?
No, why?
They were making room for their next expected Simpsons. Do you know what it was?
Was it Alan Gregory?
No.
Oh, God.
It was the Cleveland Show.
See, I don't know if that's better or worse than Alan Gregory.
I mean, the fact that they decided to put King of the Hill on a shelf indefinitely for a second Family Guy.
Listen, I'm gonna be that person to say I liked the Cleveland Show when I was younger.
When you were younger, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm ashamed to admit that I have had like one or two of the seasonal DVDs of the Cleveland Show somewhere in my house.
I didn't know that about you.
Again, younger. We do things when we're younger that we are not proud of.
Is that our next?
God,
is
no.
that our next retrospective podcast?
Absolutely not.
Skipping Family Guy entirely for the Cleveland Show.
It's shorter.
Is it still running?
No,
Good.
it's been off the air for like over a decade. I think it only had 3 seasons.
And you got rid of King of the Hill for this,
I
Fox.
thought you were accusing me. Like,
No,
you
no,
got
no.
rid of King of the Hill for this. You did this.
Yeah, you specifically, Guard. You tossed out your King of the Hill DVDs to make room for Cleveland and his show.
Listen, all I'm saying is sometimes it was funny. It's every time you go up to bat, you'll eventually hit the ball once or twice.
I don't doubt that. And I'm sure that it was a period of some experimental effort by the creators, but...
No, it was a period of trying to capitalize on Family Guy.
Yeah, all right, fair. I don't think King of the Hill was the right choice to cut for that one.
It's true. I mean,
Then again, how long it had been going on for?
at least over
1997.
Yeah, at least over a decade at that point. Mm-hmm. And I mean, out of all the shows, I know it actually got a proper like conclusion, so I'm not going to be upset about that. Like,
Yeah.
there are so many shows out there that don't get that closure of like a final episode that wraps everything up. So, mistakes for miracles, or the other way around, whatever.
Yeah, but it feels a bit like, a dog show bringing out one of its longtime participants is like, oh, this is their final year, and then the following dog is ugly as sin.
Yeah, and they expect you to love it.
Yeah, just as much. Anyway, episode 7's the racism one.
Well, I'll be damned.
Is that? I mean, I think there's a case to be made that these next couple episodes, if not most of the season, is just the bigotry season, because there is
Yes.
a lot of stuff in this first season. I don't remember being so. I mean,
They lay it on thick.
it's to the point where that Hank and Peggy aren't malicious about it. They're just
Yes.
stupid. And
They're ignorant, not harmful. Well, they're a little bit harmful. They're not
Little
malicious,
harmful.
they're ignorant, but also they're stubborn and retaliatory.
which is like, you can argue that it's still bad that they are the way that they are unapologetically.
Yes.
It is still a problem.
Yeah.
But there's also a case to be made of like, well, they're not walking up to Khan's house and calling him slurs, you know what I mean?
Well-
Necessarily. Well,
He came close
Hang
at
on,
the
I-
start, but that was part of the progress.
yeah, we all we all start somewhere, I guess.
Yes. I guess starting off, one of the first notes that I made is Khan is so short.
Khan is very short, but I guess that's kind of the part of the dichotomy between Khan and Hank.
I think
and how
it
different
is.
they are.
But I've seen by episode 11, the last time I think I've seen Khan, they seem to have scaled him up to roughly everyone else's height, at least in the Backyard Boys.
Yeah. No, I think you're right, because they have a lineup of like the 4 boys, and then Hank's like in his lawn.
Hank's in his lawn crying, yeah, but like
and
Khan is
yeah,
on
and
the
they're all
level
kind of
with
the same
everyone
height.
else, but in the first
Yeah.
moments of Khan's introduction, Khan is like chin height to Hank, roughly.
Yeah, no, that's fair. What my first real notes were the way that they were talking about the movers and how they were like appraising them like meat almost.
I mean, he was talking about those movers more sensually than anyone talked about Peggy for a while.
He talked about the blonde mover that was supposed to be the next like tight end at Arlen High more appreciatively than he's ever talked about Bobby.
Yeah.
and that's like
He talked about those movers to his friends with more like near lustful intent than he did trying to sell a real Texas man to Luann 2 episodes earlier.
yeah. I forgot about that until just now.
Yeah.
It is not a good sign when in like the first 3 minutes they use the word the Orient or they use the phrase the Orient.
Yes. I wrote down Peggy is so racist, Luann somehow isn't. Quote, it's like we get to visit the Orient without diarrhea or being jailed for our pro-democracy beliefs.
And it's like, it reminds me of like when I was like really early kid, like I've got to be 5 or 6.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going to Target and they used to have Lego toys that were just called Oriental Express or something like that.
Yes.
And it's like, I understand that the way that we use words changes over time, but there's a difference between like a Lego set being called that and Peggy literally calling the people next door Oriental constantly when they're literally not. Like, it's like, come on, man.
I just checked my notes. The next line I have after that whole line is, Jesus Christ, she keeps going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This whole episode was just Jesus Christ, they keep going. Like, every time you think it can't get worse, it'll get more and more, like, just racist.
And Bobby and Luann are our only saving graces in this effort. Bobby is too young and kind of too stupid to realize what prejudice is, and Luann is actively making the effort to not be prejudiced in her weird roundabout way. And oh my god. To be fair, Khan and Min also kind of suck as people.
Well, they suck in the different ways where I don't think Min is over. Well, I shouldn't say that because she does get a little bit spicy. In
she has her moments. She has her moments.
But I don't think Min is necessarily hostile. I think she's just a little self-absorbed. Khan, I think, is just a prick. Min
suffers from a certain, maybe not suffers. Min shows a certain degree of competitiveness that I think plays off of Peggy in a really bad way, and they keep riling each other up.
I also I don't remember the rest of the show super well. I think they play up their accents really, really hard early on.
Yeah,
because I don't remember Min's voice being that thick later on. Like,
yeah,
she has a pretty, like, Khan has the accent, but he's still like pretty, like, you could understand him.
Yes.
There are times when Min talks really quickly. I'm like, what is she fucking saying? And it's like, holy shit.
I think she speaks faster than a lot of the characters on the show, but that is also...
She definitely does.
I think that's also a good, showing of her difference with Texans, because Texans are known for talking at a glacial pace.
Right.
I mean,
I think
listen to anyone but Boomhauer.
I think the funniest line in the episode to me, though, is when they were talking about, like, Khan and Min were going back and forth about they need to be nice to the new neighbors. They don't want to get run out of town again. And it's like, it wasn't them getting run out of Laos or anything. It was her saying that they got kicked out of Anaheim.
They got kicked out of Laos. They got kicked out of Anaheim. I'm not running again, Khan.
How bad do you have to be to get kicked out of Anaheim? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, it's like I wrote down Khan somehow got them kicked out of Laos and Anaheim, and like 4 lines down in my notes, I wrote down Khan's wife Min is impulsive and rude, I guess. Oh god, she might have been the one.
You know what? Yeah, you're right. Like, I was kind of thinking it was going to be Khan, but it might have been Min, honestly, in Anaheim. Absolutely. She was probably a bad PTA mom.
I mean, she jumps into Peggy's shoes immediately.
Yeah,
as they're on the way out of the house.
That whole dinner scene is brutal in a lot of places.
It really is. Speaking of, before we go further, actually...
Yeah.
Brown Betty, have you ever had it?
I have never had Brown Betty. I don't know what the fuck it is.
It is it's like a relative pastry of, like, cobbler.
My assumption was it was some sort of, like, cobbler or something of that ilk.
It's like if cobbler was made really thin and you stacked several on top of each other. There's just layers of, like, flavored crumbs between, like, fruit.
Because my assumption when I hear the word Brown Betty is like some sort of cinnamon pastry of some sort.
Yeah,
but
it's a cobbler-esque. It's like cobbler lasagna.
Gotcha.
Yeah, And that somehow becomes the crux of their entire relationship, more so than even like Hank and Con.
Well,
somehow.
we'll get to that. That their whole crux becomes just one of the most absurd escalations in like cartoon history I've ever seen.
Yes.
The way that they get from one point to another in this story is so insane. I had to stop when I first saw it. I was like, "What are we really going here? I don't remember this."
Yeah. I have a series of quotes that happen very shortly after each other following the dinner scene.
Yeah.
Hank describes Doggy, which is a British dog from what I understand.
It's like a little like terrier, yeah.
Yeah. It's as a Chinese fighting dog.
Yeah. Yeah, he does. He sure does, doesn't he? Well, there was one line. There was one line while they were at the dinner. One thing I wanted to bring up was they were talking about the test scores versus attendance.
Oh God.
And it was
well, my boy may not test too well, but he's got perfect attendance. You tell him. Like there's anything more to say.
It's like, God, that whole... There's a lot of awkward dinner scenes in media, but I think that one might be one of the most awkward I've seen in a long time.
It's up there. It's
rough.
It's two people who have absolutely no intent of, like, understanding each other's positions, trying to seem impressive in some form or fashion.
Yeah. And every time Hank tries to, like, impart that he just hates Con because he's Con, he somehow makes it seem even more racist.
And I quote, "What the hell kind of country is this where I can only hate a man if he's white?"
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't hate the man because he's Chinese. I hate him because of what he does. Jesus Christ, man.
There was a line where he said it was not because of what his people did to us in WW2. And it's like that is the most cotton line I've ever heard come out of Hank. But
and what follows in the next episode is extremely indicative of why Hank says these things. But before we get there,
yeah, it's just this episode ends up becoming just one of the most. Again, it's hard. I don't want to keep saying racist because it's not malicious necessarily. It becomes kind of just ignorance versus intent.
Yes, and it's a very, very good display of that, especially from a Texas perspective, because this is a very common thing.
And it's like everyone starts getting into this crazy tizzy over. I guess you could say it's an understandable misunderstanding.
Well, it's understandable to them and their friends. It's not now in 2024.
Right, like, I guess we should just rip the Band-Aid off and say that there is a misunderstanding that Con and his family are serving dog meat at a barbecue.
Apparently, they cook it very well, too, so
I mean,
there's some mixed feelings.
Yeah, what was it? Hank, Boomhauer, and Bill were all just, like, stuffed from it.
Yeah. Dale refuses.
And of course Dale refuses.
While he's looking for an excuse, he sees that Doggy's gotten off of the leash and decides that's the crux of his argument immediately.
Oh my God. And the speed in which all the other characters go with it. I mean, Hank is a little resistant at first until he eavesdrops for like half a second.
Yeah.
And like immediately decides that Min is trying to order more dog meat.
Yes.
And then it's just like everything spirals out of control from there. Everything just goes to hell.
And the funniest part is Bill, like, fully convinced that might be the case, and he still thinks it's delicious. He's still licking his fingers like an hour later.
I don't remember what the line was, but there was a line where like someone was like, they learned how to cook dog meat, and Bill's like, yeah, it's delicious too, and everyone looks at him. It's like he's like, what?
Yeah, right. Earlier on, Min gives Peggy the recipe for the burger, saying, "Oh, your Hank loved Con's burger so much, we gave him the recipe. Now you can please him." But like later on, when the dog's missing and they're all just standing around wondering after Dale's said his piece, I think Hank says the recipe called for chopped meat. Dale says dog is meat, and Bill just replies with, "You said it, friend," while sucking on his fingertips.
Yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
It's like, oh wait, hold on.
I guess we should quickly say like there's a B plot throughout the whole episode about Con and Min's daughter Con Jr. and
Yes.
Bobby starting to get along.
Yes.
and that's kind of where this subplot leads into the main plot.
That's right. It starts with Doggy, whose last name is Khan, by the way. It's Doggy Khan.
Yeah.
Everyone but Min is named Khan. And in Ladybird, it's a Ladybird episode. Ring the bell. Woo!
The best dog.
And I quote, "Your dog Ladybird, she's a slut."
Yeah, hearing Hank say the word "slut" was like
No, that was
shock to the
Khan.
synapses. No, but he says
that's
it back.
right.
He's like, she is not a slut.
She's not a
And I'm
slut.
like,
She's in heat.
that was a shock to the synapses to hear him say that.
Yeah. Followed shortly after by Chinese and their stupid stereotypes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But the main plot is Doggy
Gets off the leash.
Doggy knows that Ladybird is in heat.
Yep.
So he's like
He's interested, as a dog is.
He's interested, and they pull him apart. But Bobby and Con Jr. are like, well, they want to play because they're like 10 years old.
Yeah.
And they don't know what's going on. So they let Doggy off the leash to try and go find Ladybird, and then it just becomes a mess.
Doggy becomes immediately distracted by a car driving by.
Yep.
And races off in the opposite direction, and they cannot keep up because Con Jr. is a child and Bobby is a fat child. and they fail to find him for a while.
Their genius follow-up idea is that Ladybird is a bloodhound. We can give her the scent and she'll find Doggy.
Yeah.
And then Ladybird runs off.
Yep. Also in the opposite direction.
Which then leads to the main point of contention.
It's the climax.
It's the climax.
Yeah.
Where Hank is now convinced, because they cannot find Ladybird, that Con has kidnapped Ladybird.
Yes.
And is going to use her as meat.
Yes. And that comes to the confrontation where Hank is being a freak, spying through their window for the second time in a 2-hour span.
Yep.
And Con comes to greet him with a baseball bat at the front door because both of them are describing the situation so cryptically that nobody can understand what exactly is going on.
No, literally no one else. There's a whole crowd behind them, and literally everyone else is like, what is going on? No one's saying anything or trying to stop this because they're all confused.
Yeah, and Con doesn't understand what Hank's talking about. Hank thinks that Con's being coy because neither of them are willing to speak plainly about it until finally, Hank lets out that Ladybird's gone too, and that's when the kids show up. Right before Hank's about to get his brains bashed in.
Exactly. Right before the series is about to have a short 7-episode run.
Yeah.
And it's like, it has a sweet ending in a sort of weird way where Con and Hank both like punish their kids at the same time.
They both say, go to your room at the same time.
In a similar cadence. And they're like, oh, so you are strict with your kid too. And they start comparing the way that they like...
You spank your child? No, I think it's barbaric. Me too.
Yeah, don't believe in it.
Yeah, don't believe in it. How about going to bed without dessert? It works every time. Didn't know a kid could be so motivated by a fortune cookie and an orange slice.
Yeah,
and Con somehow comes back saying that fortune cookie carries big wisdom, and also oranges are juicy and sweet. It's like, Jesus Christ, you're feeding right into it, guy.
It's like, I mean, at that point, what do you do? You're gonna try and like push it, or you're just gonna be like, wow, this guy's an idiot. This guy is completely backwards.
Yeah. They both go to bed hungry, and that's what really matters, is the final line before the resolving moment, where both dogs return of their own accord.
On their, I dropped my phone. Oops.
That's just how enthusiastic everyone is for the dogs to return home. They leap into the arms of their owners. That's where I learned that Doggy's last name is Con.
Yeah. It's a nice ending to a very abrasive episode, to put it lightly.
Yes.
It is an uncomfortable episode with a lot of funny moments that you don't know if you should laugh at.
Yes.
And then it
has an excellent after credits scene where Peggy seems to be running through old family recipes with Min to get her take on it, because everyone likes Min's food. By the way, I guess Peggy's Brown Betty, despite being so proud of it, is like well known in the neighborhood for being bad.
Yeah, some random mom at the barbecue was like, Peggy, I usually have a hard time keeping down your Brown Betty, but this time it's delicious.
And the only difference is that there's nutmeg. But also, that's the only recommendation that Min has for any of the recipes that Peggy offers her. And it seems like they have this weird competitive thing, but Peggy ends up upset with Min, but respecting her culinary taste.
I guess you could call it that, yeah.
I mean, that's the closest we're going to get, but also all she recommends is adding nutmeg, even to fried chicken.
And then she gets repulsed at the idea of having rabbit.
Yeah. And that's the rough plot. Though I wanted to point out at one point that when earlier on, when Ladybird goes missing, Dale sits down next to the open leash to check for clues. He tests Ladybird's water dish, licks his fingers, and says, "Yeah, it's still wet."
Yep.
Yeah, of course it is. It's water.
Yeah, Dale hasn't had an episode to him yet, but he's one of those characters that, like, when he starts speaking up, it's either going to be a really funny line, or he's going to absolutely just destroy the scene on his own. Something he does is going to just sandbag this scene and move on.
I mean, he was like the third biggest character in the sex ed episode, just being this weird fuckhead.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. One of the last notes I wrote down for this episode is, God, what a life it would be to live across the street from these freaks.
Like being one of the nameless, like, other characters on this street and seeing everything they get up to.
Yeah.
Hearing, like, oh, what did Peggy do this week? Oh, Peggy said what?
I wrote that down during the climax where they're, like, yelling in front of Khan's house, and Khan has a bat, and there's a small crowd of nameless background characters, like, coming up to see. And I just imagined myself being one of those people who doesn't know who these idiots are, but still wondering, what the hell's going on here?
This first season, I noted this, like, later on, I think it's like episode 11, like, this first season does a lot to kind of, like, not shame, but, like, really show the spectacle of, like, the hills.
Yes.
And, like, how they're not, I wouldn't say they're anywhere near, like, a Family Guy or Simpsons level of, like, dysfunctional family.
No.
But they definitely have problems that are very clear. And they feel more believable because of that. Because the problems they have aren't so eccentric that you can't, like, relate to these characters. But it makes every episode and their struggles feel more real.
They have problems that I feel are normal problems that get exacerbated by the weird people they live near. Dale being a very big catalyst for that.
Dale and Bill, and to some degree.
Yes. Boomhauer doesn't do anything but exist in the periphery. He is a comfortable totem that just sits off to the side and everything's fine near him, mostly. But, like, Khan exacerbates some of Hank's weirdest things. Dale worsens everything Hank touches. Bill is a lot. Wow, he's a lot.
God, there are so many moments where it's just like, why are you the way that you are? Oh, that's why.
Yeah. Even Luann occasionally just kind of, like, mucks things up a little bit. But, like, the Hill family as a whole have very normal problems that are just made worse by other people who don't have it all together.
Exactly. And it's like, the further the series goes on, you kind of see why these characters are the way that they are. Because this whole first season is really just establishing the Hill house.
Yeah.
Pretty well, I would say, too.
I think the final half, but not the final half, the second half of the first season does a lot to characterize things that you've seen in the first half, but don't really have an understanding of why they do that.
Right.
There's, I think it's what, episode 10, maybe 11, that explains a lot of Peggy.
Yeah.
10, yeah. We'll get to that one later, but it's there's so many things they do, and they get expanded on later, because everything has an origin, right?
Sure does, doesn't it?
We learn a lot about some of them in the following episode here, but nobody's, like, supremely fucked up. They're all kind of they're all normal for, like, 90s Texas standards.
Yes, the current characters we know, but a character we become very acquainted with in the next episode is certainly a shock to the entire, like, status quo of everything.
Episodes 7 and 8, I think, tightly wrap up the bigotry arc.
There's still some stuff that permeates through the rest of the season.
There's more, but this is where
this is really
this is a very tight package. This is
Yeah.
if someone took all of the bigotry sugar in the series and boiled it down and made taffy, it would be episodes 7 and 8.
I think episode 7 is uncomfortable, but I
Yes.
think episode 8 is just like really hard to get through in some spots by the way that Cotton. It's Cotton Hill. He's
Hill.
introduced. He's introduced in this episode. It's Hank's dad, and God, is he?
This is his first time being a part of the episode, but not as a memory. This is his first appearance as a living being interacting with the current iteration of these characters.
I remember when I used to watch the show when I was younger, I never really liked Cotton.
There are reasons
And-
for that.
Right, and I always wonder, like, was it just because I was a kid and I didn't understand the character?
No.
But watching this episode again, it's like, no, this is just who this character is, and he is irredeemable in spots.
Yeah, episode 7, where Khan is introduced, shows a lot of the non-malicious casualness of like ignorance and mild bigotry, right?
Right.
It's not great that everyone treats them the way they are, but nobody does it out of malice. Episode 8 shows what happens when someone has made some of that malice a part of their personality, and it hurts even people they don't direct it towards.
It's not even just part of their personality. It is like their entire existence is just this hurricane of pure bigotry and just ignorance to the highest degree.
It's also where we learn that Cotton was like 14 when he joined the army and lost his shins.
I don't believe that story.
I know that he was underage. I know that is a consistent
Yeah.
thing. I think 14 was probably an exaggeration, but I know he was a teenager.
He was young.
And
But-
losing his shins in the war while he was still a teenager, not even in his 20s, shaped his
Yeah.
whole life.
I get that. But there's like the time you actually see him tell that story is like, God, this is so bullshit. This
Yes.
is just who you are.
Yes.
Everything has to be a spectacle.
There's a funny moment in that, but I think I'll save it for once we get there.
We'll get there, yeah.
Before we even get to Cotton Hill, the episode starts with Bobby getting ready for his birthday party, and he pulls out the funniest fucking line.
What does he say? I don't remember what exactly the line is.
They're talking about why he doesn't want Cotton Hill to come by because he doesn't like Grandpa. His grandpa's a dick.
Yeah, well, yeah.
But that's not even the only thing on his mind, as he says to his mother, "The kids are already gonna hate me because you got the wrong kind of bean dip."
Right. Yeah, that's right. and Peg just, what's wrong with the bean dip?
Yeah,
it's like so
what's wrong with your
genuinely hurt.
grandfather? Like, or immediately after that, if I had the power to, I'd reach in the TV, clamp a hand over Hank's mouth, and go, no, I'm not over the bean dip. Explain yourself, Bobby.
It was just how hurt she was. Like, what's wrong with the bean dip? It's like, oh my God, she was like so proud of that.
What is he, like 11? 12?
I think he's 12 now because of the birthday.
Yeah, what 12-year-old kid is going to have their feelings shifted about one of their classmates / friends about a bean dip? Not only just like not liking bean dip, but it being the wrong kind.
What distracted me about that scene, that's a very funny line, but what distracted me the whole time was they were putting up like streamers and a banner, and did you notice the balloons?
Yes.
The balloons were distracted me in that scene, but they were just these deflated balloons that they still strung up. They weren't even blown up.
I mean, you saw why, right?
Yeah, but I'm just like, it's like, what possessed you to be like, yeah, fuck it, just put them up there?
I mean, for those who haven't seen this, it starts with Peggy blowing up a balloon. Luann is on a stepladder, making a little line of balloons on a string to hang from the wall. Peggy blows up the balloon, hands it off to Bobby. He tries his damnedest to tie it off, fails, lets all the air out, and he still passes it along to Luann to tie up.
Yeah.
It's just a garland of deflated balloons that have been stretched out.
I just like that no one, it's like, again, I know why it happened, but it's like, how does someone in this chain of command should have said something and be like, all right, hang on, let's redo this one.
I mean, like, how many times do you go through that between Peggy and Bobby doing this over and over again to get a garland that long before Peggy's just like, all right, whatever.
Right,
All right, fuck it. Like, Bobby,
true.
you clearly can't do this. I'm just not going to say anything. Luann, just put him up.
But I think what ends up being funny, we're talking about how he doesn't want Cotton to come to the party, was the way he addressed the letter to go to Cotton.
Yes, yes. It's what was it? Grandpa Hill,
Hell USA.
Hell USA.
Yeah, it says Hell USA on the envelope because that's why it got returned.
Like, he just says something to him like, you know, he lives in Houston. Why'd you address it like that? Well, Mom says he's the devil. No, I said he's evil.
How you get devil out of that is beyond me.
Mm-hmm.
That's the line afterwards. It's like,
like, well, it's not hard.
This whole episode is just lining up why Bobby didn't really like Cotton at first. Which is strange to me because, again, foresight or knowledge of where I know the series goes, Bobby has a pretty good relationship with Cotton for the rest of the series. And it's like, it was weird seeing him, like, not want Cotton around this early on.
I guess. So I have a theory about that I wrote down further on, but it feels like, especially later on in the episode when Bobby is actually picking up on his mannerisms, bad thing.
Yeah, bad mannerisms.
Cotton is giving him a lot more like affirmation and affection than he ever gave Hank.
True. It's very true.
I think Cotton really relishes a connection with a child that is not as kind of cowardly and weird as Hank is.
Which is very funny considering how Bobby is, just how Bobby is.
Yeah, but he's moldable like a baked potato in a weird way.
True.
Like he's...
True. It was very easy to get him to do what he did in this episode.
Yes. Including inciting a riot.
Well, you know, we'll get there.
We'll get there. Early on, you know, party starts. I wrote down that Min made the grossest sound I'd heard that season.
Yes.
In response to Peggy being like kind of catty about Grandpa Hill coming over.
I wrote down Min's fucking snarling is amazing because it was just so funny and out of nowhere.
It's so like guttural and gross, and I think it was supposed to be like a tiger snarl, but it's so
it was supposed to like this catty like lion tiger growl type thing.
It was so weird. It's very gross. I'm gonna put it into the podcast when I edit this.
Ooh, Peggy here.
Is this the first episode that has the deadpan like redhead kid? Was he in the previous episode already?
I think he was in a previous episode, but he shows up more in this one and then continues showing up for the next few episodes.
This is the first time he really has like an impact on like a joke because everyone's like eating cake and stuff. And he just turns to Bill and he says it to Bobby first. He says, "Everyone hates you."
Yeah, Bobby's doing his comedic routine in front of everybody and he's bombing. Redhead kid says, "Everyone hates you. Your party sucks."
It's just like, God damn, that's so brutal.
And later on, he says to Bill, "Your wife divorced you." Or your wife left you.
No, he said, your wife divorced you. And the scene just continues for a few more seconds where Bill just kind of looks down at his cake silently, takes another bite, and then the scene ends.
Yep, and there's a few more shots of him later on as well, and especially in the next couple of episodes, but like...
Yeah.
I think I wrote down in the notes of like episode 11, I hate the red hair kid.
I think he's funny. I get why you wouldn't like, because I don't think he's a good person. I think he's just fucking funny.
Oh, that's right. Several lines down here. Fuck that redheaded kid.
I think he's a recurring joke that I love.
He's a very funny joke, but like also I wish I could hit him.
Oh God, he's such a dick. Yeah.
Cotton Hill shows up.
Unfortunately.
And I wrote down, somehow Cotton Hill is so racist that he's the only Texan that can tell that Khan is Laotian.
Yeah, but before that, do you remember how he shows up?
Yes.
On the goddamn horse?
Yes. Yeah. He jumps over the fence on a horse.
Asks Bobby if he likes it, and it says it's a rental.
Before that, the very funny gag they made. We already know that Cotton Hill is short, right? We know that from the memories.
Oh, right.
But like he jumps over the fence. He comes in. Hank says something to the lines of like, "Dad, why did you do that? Why did you come in like that?" Cotton Hill looks him dead in the eyes and said, "Hey, son, I'm larger than life." And then the camera pans down to him.
He slides off the horse and it follows him, but then it just pans down even lower.
Yes.
And it's like,
Yep.
Christ.
This is perfect timing on that one. Then he sets the horse loose, as one does.
Well, I think the funny thing is like he's like, oh, Bobby and all the kids can ride it. Then the first person that rides it is fucking Bill.
Yep.
Bill jumps on the horse and takes the first ride around, and somehow that horse gets lost.
Yep.
I don't know how you lose a horse necessarily, but
Well,
you lose the
it
horse in
wasn't.
the process of the party.
Nope. It's Cotton Hill. Nobody's paying attention to the horse. Cotton Hill comes up with Hank's stepmother, who is as old as he is.
Dee Dee, yeah, Dee Dee.
Funniest shit is him acknowledging that they went to kindergarten together, but clearly they haven't talked since because all she can say is, "Hey Hank, do you still like finger painting?"
Yeah,
Just like they are in their 40s.
Dee Dee is such an uncomfortable character. I think she's very funny, but God, the implication of it is so uncomfortable every time she's on screen.
And it's all part of showing that that Cotton he's a
Just
lot.
Yeah, he is a creature.
Yes. Speaking of creature, Bobby's birthday gift is as Cotton Hill a gift as it could possibly be.
It's a full-on fucking loaded shotgun.
A loaded 12-gauge shotgun, which was promptly used to open
To
up the
blow up-
piñata that Bobby Hill was too weak to break open himself.
I love the sequence of the piñata because it's so funny.
It's so funny. I gotta lower
Bobby
it for him, and he's not even wearing a blindfold past a certain point.
Well, and then Dale cuts it like in half a little bit just to make it like structurally weaker.
God, he
and Bobby
leans
still
in
can't-
and cuts into it like he's about to skin an animal and stops
Well, yeah.
just enough to leave some structural damage to give Bobby
just
a
a little
fighting
bit of
chance.
integrity, so Bobby can like actually break into it,
And he fails.
and he still can't fucking do it. And Cotton just comes up with the 12 gauge and blasts it. Come get your Tootsie Rolls.
Yep.
This is a hard episode to kind of talk about because it's really difficult to impart just how much of a piece of shit Cotton is just by talking about him.
We will never do it justice by voice. It is an episode to watch if you want to know the full extent, but holy shit. Holy shit, this guy.
He is...
He's later bragging about his very young wife's fake breasts, which he slyly tells Bobby specifically, I got them cheap, they're both lefties.
Well, because when Dee Dee first walks up, when they first introduce the character, he's like, "Hey, Hank,
That's right, that's right.
What do you think your mom's new tatas?" I'm like, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
How would you introduce a character like that?
She's not my mom. We went to kindergarten together.
It's just Cotton throughout this entire episode. This entire episode is all about Cotton's misogyny and the way he is, and how it has affected Hank in the past and Bobby in the present.
And also how kind of, in a way that he won't admit, how desperate he is to leave an impact on his family.
One way or another.
One way or another. He thinks it's a good thing. It's clearly not to literally anyone else in the world.
It is, like, a lot of shows try to, like, give character depth by showing, like, oh, like, this character had a bad parent. This character had a bad, I don't know, family member of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that there's any fictional character outside of, like, some really bad, like, moral oral type character. Like, I don't know if you know that show at all from Adult Swim.
I know of it.
They're outside of, like, actual, like, TVMA characters that do horrendous, terrible shit that is as worse as Cotton Hill. He is probably one of the worst fictional parents I have ever seen.
The only person that I can think of that comes close to him in a lot of these ways, and I really don't know if I'm saying this confidently.
That's what I mean. It's like
he is the Rick Sanchez of 1997.
Yeah, he's not a character that he's not the worst character I've ever seen. He's not the worst, like, hasn't done the worst thing out of any, like, fictional character I've ever seen.
He is the
God, do
worst
I
in the
hate every time
context
he's
of
on
this show. He's rough.
I think in context of King of the Hill, I think he is the most evil character.
Yeah.
so far, and probably throughout the whole series, he's one of the worst characters in terms of like moral alignment.
Yeah.
But it's always
Borderline
to serve. Yeah.
borderline no empathy for other human beings.
I mean, throughout the whole episode, he keeps referring to Khan as like Hank's like butler in
Yeah.
a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy shit.
Yeah. And that's part of why it's part of the racism double feature.
Yeah, it's part of the racism double feature because it continues just bagging on Khan for just existing mostly.
Yeah. Of course,
But-
he was tangentially related to World War II by a matter of, I don't know, 1,000 miles.
Yeah.
Being 1,000 miles away. Maybe not being born yet, also.
I think one of the funniest scenes that kind of shows just how much of a war freak that Cotton was like the morning after Bobby's party when he's stuck there because the car breaks down, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Hank's like pretending about to get into a fight with him, and Cotton smashes the plate and turns it into a shiv.
Yes.
And it's like,
They're just
yeah.
playing around and like
yeah, they're just like roughhousing, like, oh, you think you can take me down type thing.
Cotton
And-
immediately gets himself like the closest thing to a knife that he could to
He
his
takes a
own
plate,
son.
yeah.
His own 40-year-old son who just wants to like roughhouse a little bit.
And they're both smiling and laughing about it, and it's just like the implication of that is really fucked up. And Peggy kind of gets the worst of it this whole episode.
She really does.
Peggy really gets like just sidelined by everyone in this episode, which I mean, Peggy isn't
Resolving
the
that
best character.
resolving that is the crux of the like conclusion of the episode too. Like
Yeah,
she doesn't
But
she doesn't just get mistreated for no reason, but she does the entire time.
there's just so many scenes of just Cotton shows up, says misogyny, gets yelled at for it, he shrugs it off.
Mm-hmm.
Because nothing Cotton does ever has repercussions.
The only
he
time
never
it comes
faces repercussions.
The only time it comes is when he directs it to Luann to her face.
And that was the scene I really liked where
Yeah.
like they're eating breakfast again, and Con. I almost said Con. Oh my god, why did I say Con? Oh, I'm looking at my notes. That's why.
Yeah.
Cotton is like, oh, you guys don't have the sausage I wanted for my breakfast because he has all these other types of meat, but he doesn't have his sausage.
Yeah.
And he starts trying to give Luann some of his food because she needs to fatten up.
Oh yeah. And you'll never know how attractive you are. You have to wait for a man to tell you.
Right.
And she shrugs it off as like, "Okay, grandpa."
And like she starts to stand up from the table, and he slaps her ass, and she grabs it.
Yeah,
in his
she
hand
grabs
and,
his
like,
hand and bends it backwards. Threatens him immediately.
Which it's like that was a good moment. Like, thank fucking God someone's just fucking telling this guy that they're gonna kill him.
I have written down here from that moment, Luann is the true ally we all need, apparently.
It's true. I mean, honestly, the one thing I've learned from these episodes is that Luann is a lot like stronger of a character than I gave her credit for initially.
Yeah. I mean, she is painted as this kind of like borderline white trash, very incompetent person, but this is maybe the third or fourth episode in this series, or in this season alone, where she's proven that she is smart and capable enough to hear a car turn on and tell what's wrong with it by sound alone. She's the one who detects what's wrong with the car twice.
Yeah, she figures out what the fuck Cotton is doing with his car. Because the truth comes out that Cotton is purposely like removing pieces of his car so he can't leave.
Yeah.
And like duping the Hills to like, oh, I have to stay a little bit longer, and creating more problems with Bobby and Hank.
Mm-hmm.
But one thing I wanted to, just a quick tangent. In the last episode, I wanted to say I wrote down a line when Peggy and Luann were going out to get pizza.
Yes.
Luann's like, "What's the rush? If we get there after 30 minutes, it's free."
Or it's, if I don't get there in 30 minutes, it's free. And
Yeah,
Peggy looks at her like she's fucking stupid.
It's like 3 seconds of silence. She looks at her, and then the scene continues.
Yes. Also, side note to that very same moment, I wanted to point out Peggy likes her pizza Hawaiian style.
She sure does. That's why she's the worst cartoon. Anyway.
So actually, I've written down here, Cotton Hill has this weird aura of misogyny that affects all men nearby.
Yeah, it's strange, again, knowing the future where Hank is really more reserved against Cotton later on, where this is obviously where it starts.
Yeah.
But it's so strange to see Hank be really, I don't want to say non-confrontational, which he is, but more so he's convinced himself that he loves his father for the way he is.
Yeah.
When it's like he wants his father to love him back, so he
Yes.
just goes with it.
And I wouldn't be surprised if some of his behavior during this episode is related to how affectionate, heavy quotes around affectionate, Cotton is being towards Bobby that he wasn't perceivably towards Hank. Because these nice moments where Cotton is trying to teach Bobby in a mentor style way that just do not show up when Hank has visible memories of Cotton. We don't know that it didn't happen. It just isn't something that Hank thinks about.
It's hard to give exact examples because there are exact examples of like what Cotton does in this episode, but there are so many of them that it just becomes kind of a blur.
Yeah.
Like I remember the big moments. Like I remember they were gonna eat like dinner one night, and it's Cotton and Bobby sitting.
Oh
in
my
the living
god!
room in
Oh,
their
I have
underwear.
a lot of notes about this very scene.
Yeah, I'll let you get to. I'm just kind of giving the general rundown. They're sitting in the living room in their underwear watching TV. Hank's like, "Why are you guys watching TV in your underwear?" And Cotton tells Bobby it's hot, and Cotton tells Bobby to take Hank's pants off.
Yes. Cotton says it's hot. And a man has the right to wear his underpants in his house as he wants. Come on, Hank, take those pants off. This is your house. And Hank says no. Cotton turns to Bobby and says, direct quote, "Bobby, take off your daddy's pants."
Yeah.
I think Peggy comes in at that very moment to stop it. But
well, it's also because dinner's getting ready. And,
yes,
and they start trying to go. Okay, let's go to the dining room to eat dinner together.
Yes,
and Cotton and Bobby are both trying to have dinner in the living room.
Yeah,
and from there it just spirals out of control in horrible ways.
Before we get to the big crux moment, I actually wanted to point out to you. Did you see what was going on with Bobby's head in the scene while they were going back and forth?
No, what do you mean?
I took a video, and I'll put this up on the podcast, but I wanted to share this with you. This very stilted animation that Bobby does with his head as they are going back and forth with Peggy.
What the fuck?
It was like very ratcheted, like turning. He's turning like a robot. He has no speaking roles in this moment, by the way. Just open mouth, action figure, stop motion.
His head is like half the frames of the rest of the carrot. What the fuck?
Yeah, Cotton Hill's over there looking smooth as butter. Look at Bobby's from a completely different production.
I can hear like the grease or like the squeaky axle turning.
Yeah.
Trying to turn. It's kind of funny because there's a lot of. I was noticing it when watching him over again. There's a lot of really strange animation in this early season, which it's an early animation or early season of a show. It's to be expected. They're kind of understanding how to rig these characters and make the show.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of really strange like poses and faces and movements.
I think they also rush through it a little bit because there are certain parts, and this video also includes it a little bit, where it's very, very easy to see like the borders of the light table behind the cells that they're working with.
Oh yeah. Oh,
you can see it around Bobby in particular here in this moment, as he has this like momentary shadow aura as he's turning his head because they have to swap these slides out really fast.
Shadow Bobby has entered the building.
But dear God, finally, Subspace Emissary has returned.
No, you're right. I'm watching it over again, and I can literally see like the movement of the cell. That's crazy.
You can also see in some sections of the season, and also in earlier episodes, but really in the last half of the season, any character with glasses has a very noticeable change in how much their face moves below the glasses versus above. Because you know Hank's that like the top half of their face was a single cell that they didn't have to change, and they only changed like from the nose down. And sometimes they get slightly misaligned.
Hank and Dale are really bad with it, I noticed.
Peggy gets it too in certain close-ups.
Yeah.
But that's, yes. So this, Bobby Hill's ratcheting his head in clean, 16-degree portions. And they converse about things, and then the slap happens.
Yeah, so they end up, I think they end up either forcing or conceding to have dinner out in the living room. Cotton doesn't get his beer, so he slaps Dee Dee's ass, and she go gets him a beer. And then Bobby, seeing that, goes, "I can do that too," and slaps Peggy on the ass.
They are talking about it, and Hank is trying to convince Peggy, and she's not having it. She turns away to talk to Hank about his behavior, and Bobby's decided that she's doing the thing that women do, where they stop a man from doing fun things. So he decides to give her the same motion that Cotton has given every waitress they've seen so far.
Yeah.
A sharp slap on the ass. Immediately, we cut to Hank chewing out Bobby from the hallway as Bobby is promptly grounded, and he and Peggy are going to very shortly have a conversation about Cotton's influence on Bobby.
Well, it's funny because Hank tries to like convince himself that it's not Cotton's influence. Like, oh, I don't know what possessed him. And Hank's like, I don't know what could have possessed him to do that.
Like,
and Peggy
I know who it
immediately
is.
goes like, yeah, it's your father. It's like, yeah, no shit. There's so much weird stuff in these scenes that feels very contrived. Like, there's a lot of places where Hank doesn't feel in character in this episode. He feels like a very big pushover to a pretty noticeable degree when Cotton is here. And I know that's on purpose because he wants his father to love him.
I think he's also kind of
But-
scared of Cotton a little bit.
I don't blame him. Cotton is a freak.
Yes.
I don't remember what the line was, what the fuck I like wrote this down about, but apparently Hank referred to Peggy as "you all" at one point, I guess.
Oh,
I'm like
they were talking about women and what they do.
yeah.
I think this is related to
Was that when Hank called Peggy a feminist?
yes. Yeah, he's like, what are you turning into a feminist? She's like, no, I'm a proud member of Texas, but also I do all these other things, including applying lipstick 30 times a day because I got to do all of these hard tasks and still look good doing it, and I do it because I want to because I'm a woman. Like, very proud of herself, and Hank's like, 30 times a day?
Yeah, that's what he got out of that moment of like empowering. Like I have to do all these things because it's part of my deal in this relationship and this agreement we have.
Yeah, and it's
then
not
she's
spoken,
walking
but I
away.
do it.
Yeah, and she's walking away saying her piece about how much she does for the family. All Hank takes away is 30 times a day.
To be fair, that's a lot of times to do
It
your
is.
lipstick.
Well, it is, and it's like I understand his confusion, but at the same time, Hank, buddy, there's other things you could have taken away from that.
Yeah. Shortly after that, we get to the scene we were talking about earlier where Cotton's on Hank's lawnmower talking to Dale, Bill, and Boomhauer.
About how he lost his shins in WW2.
There's WW2. Funniest thing was as he was describing getting his friends in the army, he described them all as kind of like you guys, except one of them was from Brooklyn.
Yeah, because it was Fatty, Stinky, and Brooklyn was the name.
Something like that.
I think.
It's kind
Something
of like
like
y'all,
that.
but one was from Brooklyn. And then it carries on, no further elaboration. He had to leave one behind when like their boat got blown up by a torpedo.
Yeah, so their boat got blown up by a torpedo, and then he scrounged up the three of them, and then he got shot 50 times in the back by a Japanese fighter plane,
Yes.
and somehow survived.
And they washed up in Japan/Vietnam, depending.
Yeah, depending on where you want to say it looks like.
His whole story's got holes in it, so it's a little hard to say, but
There's a ring of soldiers spitting on the American flag.
yeah. And he rushes in to defend it, but of course that was a decoy.
Of course.
They've just been spitting on an American flag for God knows how long, waiting for an American soldier to come up and defend its honor.
They open up like this little like
They open up a
this little
panel
hut.
in like a hut.
And then just there's this big like stationary machine gun there, just guns him down.
Mm-hmm. Blows his shins right off. That's the moment.
And then he beats them all to death with a leg.
Which I believe belonged to one of his friends.
I think he said it belonged to Fatty.
Yeah, something like that. He's holding his dead friend's leg and beats all of the
The soldiers. with him.
questionably Oriental soldiers.
That's why I
death.
just said something like I'm not gonna say what kind of soldiers they are, because it's Cotton Hill and it could probably be Laotian for all we know.
Yeah, we have no idea. The only person who knows is Cotton Hill.
And even then, I don't trust him.
No.
But it's like it's a good scene in the sense like you know he's telling this story just to fucking manipulate Hank, because that's kind of the moment where Hank starts to push back. But
He backs down
here
after
out-
this because he has to
Yeah.
like question whether he loves his wife or the fact that his father is a war hero, question mark.
and it's like the rest of the episode kind of gives Hank his spine back in a sense.
Yes. Well, it all
Except-
comes back with the next big, event, which happens shortly after this. Bobby's at school.
Because Bobby's at school and he starts being a giant prick during school lunch. And Connie walks by, right? And they're talking.
Connie walks by and he reaches out and takes food off of her plate, saying,
Yeah, it's a cake.
You're
It's a
looking
cake.
kind of fat. Don't do that.
You don't need any more cake.
Yeah. You just need a man to tell you you're attractive. You don't need this. And she takes it back and walks away. He says a killer line. Oh, she's moody. Must be PBS.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I forgot he said PBS.
PBS,
That's right.
baby. Public Broadcasting System.
God,
The
I hate
home of
PBS.
misogyny. I guess.
I guess. And then a female teacher comes by, tells Bobby to bus his tray and put it away because the school's lunch is ending.
Of course he won't, because that's woman's work.
Woman's work. Woman's work.
Woman's work. Woman's work.
All the boys in the cafeteria start chanting women's work, and they don't do it. And then
Jesus
we
Christ.
cut to Hank. We cut to Hank at his job, and he's like debating. He's like, oh, I love my wife, but he's a war hero.
Yeah.
But she's my wife.
Yeah.
As a guy that's like trying to get service,
But
like,
he got his shins blown off.
yeah, and the guy like is just trying to get some propane. It's like I'm just trying to get some propane,
And then the call comes.
and then the call where Peggy informs Hank that Bobby has been suspended for inciting a sexist riot.
Yes. And Hank says that he will go and, pick up Bobby right away. To which Peggy drops the bomb. You can't. Cotton got to him first and brought him to the Hotel Arlen.
Which in the past was a
brothel.
I guess you could call it. Yeah, because man, the way that Cotton makes it look and constantly describes it, you would think he has like a frequent flyer mile type thing there. Holy
God,
shit,
yeah.
the way he acts.
I mean, he brought Hank to it once when Hank was like a teenager. So, of course, Hank knows what's going on.
Yeah,
Turns out it's not the 60s anymore.
Yeah.
And the Hotel Arlen is no longer a brothel, it is a hotel.
It is literally just like a hotel and convention center.
Which is presently having a convention for female lawyers.
Yeah, so there's just all these women in suits around, and Cotton just keeps calling them like whores, and it's like
Full volume.
full volume, yelling it with his chest. It's like, God damn, this is so uncomfortable.
With Bobby. The entire time
Bobby.
Bobby's there, and he's like, I'm gonna buy you a hooker. Jesus Christ, guy. That's when the final confrontation finally happens. Hank finds his spine and realizes that Peggy and his family is more important than Cotton's
Existence.
everything. Yeah.
Fact that he exists on Earth at all. And it's in that moment where there's like a really nice like sequence where Hank is really putting his foot down about like how he loves Peggy and he trusts Peggy. Peggy's like his best friend.
Yes.
And when he finally decides to choose Peggy over Cotton starts to walk away pretending he's all like dejected. It's like, I can't believe my own son is like finally given up on me or something like that.
My own son doesn't love me anymore.
That's what it was, right?
Yeah.
And he starts walking away, and then he like grins. It's like, it's about time. It's like, holy shit!
It's like,
this
everyone
character's-
knows love is a lie. Everything sucks. And then he screams to the whole convention center, you ladies keep yourselves clean. I'll be back in a year. You can send my tab to the Hill House.
Yeah, it's
Like,
so bad.
Jesus Christ.
I think the best part though is where it ends, where it's Hank and Bobby are having this like kind of heart to heart at night in Hank's
Yes.
truck, and they're talking about, oh, women are
Yeah.
like
You're allowed to have a female friend. You're allowed to have a best friend who's a woman. They're equal to you. Your mom is more intelligent than half of Arlen.
Well, yeah, and it's like Hank drops that line of like, "Oh, I married my best friend." It's
Yes.
like that's a really genuine moment. Like
Yeah.
I believe him. He's such a nice person at that point.
Yeah. And the final line he says is, "Women aren't here to service us."
Yeah, women were not out. I wrote it down. Women were not put on this earth to serve you and me. And it slowly pans out, and they're at like a drive-in,
Like a Sonic drive-in, and he says something like, "Now who wants some ice cream?" as a scantily clad woman on roller skates
Yeah.
like rides up to the car window and passes an ice cream through the window to Bobby.
I think this episode was the hardest one to get through for me
Yes.
so far. Just because Cotton is such an abrasive character to the point where it's like I don't even like watching the episode because I dislike him. He's just so hard to like deal with when he's on screen, because you know he's gonna say some shit that's so bad.
Yes.
You know he's gonna do something that's so out of left field that's not funny.
He is extremely of his time as a character and as like he is of his time in the context of the show, but his episodes are of their time in the context of us watching the show 30 plus years since it like aired.
Right, yeah.
Things have completely changed, and what we find kind of funny or acceptable to a humorous degree have completely changed. And I imagine that his episodes were a hit at the time.
Yeah, it's like I appreciate that Cotton exists as
Yeah.
a character to be like, this is an example of a horrible person.
Yeah.
Please learn from this. But at the same time, it's like, holy shit.
This is the degree of like he's a very good example of the kind of person that Hank, who is himself kind of conservative and, you know, bigoted him mildly, has
Yeah.
grown away from, right? Cotton is a weird kind of monolith to a previous age where people did things differently in a way that we've all grown away from. You know, they don't do that anymore, even in backwoods Texas.
Right.
And that is a good juxtaposition, but also, holy shit, dude. Oh my god, you can't say that. You can't say that about a man.
Again, it's another one of those episodes that, like, if you haven't seen it, you kind of have to watch it for yourself to really understand the depths of Cotton and how far he'll go. Because there's so much stuff we didn't even touch on, so many little moments where Cotton is just the worst person.
Yes.
And it's impossible to cover it all. You just kind of have to see it for yourself.
It is.
Unfortunately.
Oh my god.
Because, I mean, you shouldn't have to see it for yourself if you don't want to, but Lord.
There's no episode I want to recommend less than this one,
Yeah.
but you won't get the full context if you don't watch it. So if anyone's listening at home...
It's important to the context of the characters going forward, but God, is it definitely the most dated of the episodes we've covered so far.
So Boggle. Have you ever played Boggle?
I have played Boggle. It is not my favorite game, but it is a game I have played.
I don't think that I've ever been in a situation where I've been like curious about a thing I've been introduced to and then lost that interest through the context of what I was viewing faster than I was with Boggle in this episode.
Boggle is definitely one of those games you'll see at like your grandpa's house and you'll play like maybe once and like, thanks grandpa, and you make sure you never even speak the word Boggle again.
Yeah, and it's less fun than a crossword puzzle.
It's a little bit more interactive than just reading a dictionary, I guess.
It is like I don't know if this makes sense. Disregard me entirely if this is stupid. Mm-hmm. It feels like the weird kind of stunty child between a crossword puzzle and a spelling bee, but written down.
No, I feel that. No, I see what you mean.
It takes a very specific kind of person to be able to find words in a jumbled mess. Peggy's real good at it, apparently.
It's very good for people who like words and just being able to sort out, like, weird word puzzles.
Yeah.
But I've never been in a position where I'm like, if I had a selection of board games to play, Boggle would never be my first choice.
I think every so often I would pick up, like, the what's it called? The case?
Sure.
jiggle them around, put them down, and never write a single word down, just not bother.
I used to work at like a summer camp type thing, and there was I would deal with kids from like age 6 to age like 12.
Mm-hmm.
And Boggle was always the last game everyone picked. Everyone's picking like, oh, Monopoly. Oh, I want to go play Sorry. I want to play all these games that you can actually like engage in. No one's picking Boggle for their first option.
Yeah, no.
Other than just like the 6-year-olds grabbing the thing and constantly shaking it.
I considered for this podcast a while ago seeing if I could find Boggle online and convincing you to play with me. And by the end of the episode, I think by the second time I watched this episode, because it's been a couple times, I just decided I don't know that either of us would be like very interesting to watch doing this.
So Boggle isn't something that's so interactive. Like you can make content out of like a Monopoly game. You can talk shit to someone actively as you're playing Monopoly or something like that.
You can't talk during Boggle.
It's
impossible.
It's distracting. It's distracting to both you and the other person. It's detrimental. It's not fun just sitting there and finding words.
And if you do what Peggy occasionally does in this and just say your words aloud, then you're just giving points to the enemy.
Exactly.
This is one episode that I think has been either recommended or warned of me by others in anticipation.
I mean, this episode is notable because of the Mower Expo, honestly.
It really is. But like
And-
I had this described to me as one of the episodes that shows that Peggy is a very quirky and unique creature. I think maybe negatively, but I don't know that I agree with that.
I don't think this is an episode that... I think there's a later episode that shows that more than this. But this is an episode where it shows her being... She has outside influences other than just being a substitute teacher and a stay-at-home mom most of the time.
I think a lot of people misremember this episode because it was certainly advertised to me in a certain way, and I don't think it fulfilled those advertisements.
No, I think this episode is a fine Peggy episode. I don't think it's anywhere near her worst.
Yeah, no, I rather liked it. I liked her in it, too. And
I think most people think of this episode poorly because of the mundane aspect of it. Like,
yes.
How are you going to make a Boggle tournament interesting?
Despite the fact that, A, they successfully do it, and B,
yes,
like some of the funniest and most frequently used memes from like King of the Hill come from this episode.
I was so shocked to see some of the stuff I write. Like, even today, like I saw a fucking loser, you're a loser meme like on Twitter, just looking at stuff online.
We got a loser, you're a loser. We got the ever classic, I ain't got no dang fingers.
I mean, the whole Mower Expo, like at the start, has been YouTube pooped to hell and back.
Yeah,
like that has been a staple of like sentence mixing and YouTube poop edits since like 2006.
And completing this episode, I had the conscious thought to myself that like I really don't know as much about future episodes as I thought I did, because almost all of the dumb jokes, YouTube poops, and memes that I'm aware of come from the first season, apparently.
Yeah, a lot of the first season has some of the most classic like meme bait.
Yeah,
which I think is the case for a lot of like older shows.
Yeah,
because a lot of people aren't gonna go back to like
nobody's gonna check season 7.
Right, and it's like. That's also when like the creators were still kind of finding their footing.
Yes.
So they took risks on really weird ideas, which there's one at the very end I'm going to bring up, but I don't want to talk about it yet because it's one of the funniest things I've ever seen in this show unintentionally. But the whole crux of the episode is literally just
Peggy likes Boggle.
Peggy likes Boggle, and she goes to a tournament for it.
She's real good at it.
If you think that either sounds really kind of interesting from a character standpoint or really boring from an overall story standpoint,
you're both right.
You're probably right on both counts.
This is a very entertaining episode about people doing things that would, without the context of the episode, be extremely boring.
Yes. But because it's written for Hank and Peggy Hill, it becomes interesting in the way that these two characters clash in their ideals.
Yes.
I would say it is very much a Pank. Oh my god.
It's a Pank.
Yeah, Pank episode. It's a Pank episode. That's their ship.
Yeah,
name.
that's...
No, it's...
I ship Peggy Hill and Hank Hill. I call him Pank. I'm a real Pank head. I'm Pank pilled. I'm a real Pank cell.
Dude, I'm based and Pank pilled.
Based on what? Based on season 1, episode 9 of The King of the Hill, baby.
I'm based on Boggle. But yeah, no, this episode is really nice for these two characters to kind of fun. It's after the last episode of Cotton Hill's bullshittery.
Oh my God, this one's a breath of fresh air.
It's really nice to have an episode where we actually see that these two love each other.
Yes.
in real ways.
The Cotton Hill episode is funny in its own ways, but it is a cold, cold winter. And episode 9, Peggy the Boggle Champ, their least creative episode name, by the way. This is springtime finally coming into bloom. I can hear the birds out the window. I can see the butterflies. Oh my God, the world is alive. And it's just Peggy and her dumb hobby. And Hank and his dumb hobby.
It's funny. I'm looking at my notes for that. This is the episode I have the least amount of notes for this section of episodes we watched.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's necessarily because it's boring, but I think it's because I was very interested to see how they would kind of adapt this story into like an actual story.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of really good jokes throughout the episode, but there's nothing that's like... There's never any moment where I'm like, oh, this is a beautiful story. This is a great story that they needed to tell.
Yeah. I learned a few interesting things about this that I'll bring up later. I think I'm also in the same boat. This has the least notes that I have of these 3 episodes right here. My first note is King Mulch.
Yeah, mine too. Mine says, my first note is the Mower Expo. Yes, King Mulch.
Yeah, King Mulch, Texas-sized pile of twigs.
I've seen edits of that scene so many times. I was so confused when he wasn't repeating Sea King over and over again.
Oh my God. My next note is stupid. It's not just the word stupid. No.
Oh, so is it just the word stupid?
No, I wish.
Okay.
They are talking about Peggy's checking Min's word in the dictionary. I think it's pad thai.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah, there's a lot of,
Yeah, and, they're talking about how she only plays casually. Min, and then promptly, asks for Min's buy-in. Because, of course, they're playing for real money.
Yeah, like $13 or something like that.
$13. Min immediately turns to Peggy and says, next week I'll teach you mahjong. Bring your checkbook.
Yeah. Min has a lot of really good snide remarks to Peggy in this episode. It's really funny.
I think the only reason that caught my mind was because I've been learning to play mahjong recently.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
No, it's fun. I like it. I'm having a great time.
That's good. I'm glad.
It's poker with words that I can't read.
I tried to learn it once when I was playing Yakuza for the first time, and I wanted to cry.
I'll you know what? I'll teach you later.
I would love to learn it because it seems interesting, but holy shit, is it like a barrier of entry?
Yeah, it's less than you think. It's less than you think. Once you figure out the suits, it's fine. But that is the only reason that I latched onto this, because I know I watched this episode before I started learning to play mahjong, and I glazed right over that because I just thought, oh, let's be real. I'm gonna be dead honest. 1997 show. Of course, the one Asian character plays mahjong. That's how it is.
Of course.
She is the only. She is the only, in Peggy's words, Oriental woman in Texas. In our
they keep
context,
calling Oriental too.
Sure do. They sure do.
So stupid.
At least they know they're Laotian now.
I mean,
thanks, Cotton.
They know it. They know it, but they're not going to call them that.
You're from the ocean.
You're from the ocean. Yeah,
but
God.
I wrote that down almost exclusively because now I know how to play mahjong, and I was just hooting at my screen and pointing like a fucking monkey, oh, I know that game. Oh, I want to see the Peggy mahjong episode.
I'm trying to remember what the exact line is, but Dale says something to Hank, and she refers to Peggy as a they, and Hank freaks out and goes, "Who calls her that?" And Dale just responds, "They."
Oh yeah. I didn't write that one down, but God, yeah, they.
I'd have to look for the clip again, but it's just it's like you know what they say, and then Hank's like, "Who calls her that?"
Who says that?
They.
It's like, of course, Dale, you're just stirring shit.
I realize I don't have a lot of notes before they even go to the tournament.
I think
there's not much that happens really.
I think half of my notes are exclusively from before the tournament.
That's funny.
So there's the mahjong line, then Hank and Peggy are talking about the validity of boggle in a tournament,
Oh, right.
I guess the previous game being played at the community center, I guess, is the Elks.
Yeah, the Elks.
Yeah, the Elks Lodge or whatever is the local, community center that this tournament is taking place at. And the previous game they did was Cow Pie Bingo, where cow just walks around and shits in a square, and
Did you see what they were playing Boggle for, by the way? Boggle for
oh
bail?
right, yeah, the treasurer of the Elks is in jail and needs bail. But like they were talking about these games like Cow Bingo. Again, a cow walks around in a square and shits in one of these like dedicated zones. And Peggy describes Boggle as a game of wits. Cow Bingo is a game of strategy.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No.
No, you have to be strategic. You really have to know how that cow walks. You have to know which cow it is, to know like their temperament. You just gotta know. It's like horse racing.
Yep. Shortly after that, they talk about going to Dallas for state because, of course, Peggy is extremely good at Boggle and wins the the tournament.
Yeah. So then, like, oh, you should go to the state championship and actually take on like other Boggle people outside of Arlen.
Yeah. Become the state Boggle champion, Peggy. And she says, you know what, I will. Of course, Hank is concerned because he says of Dallas, that place is full of crackheads and debutantes.
Half of them play for the Cowboys.
And half of them play for the Cowboys. Surprise, surprise. They're going to the same convention center the lawnmower, expo is happening.
Thank God.
So he wrangles the boys.
He's very excited to tell the boys that he's going to the mower convention. They're all excited because they're going to go together.
Yep. And then Hank wakes up at 4. No, not even wakes up. He gets ready to go by 4 in the fucking morning.
Yep.
Because, and I quote, we got to get to Dallas before the gangs wake up.
Is that what he says?
Yes.
I don't remember that. Fuck.
Yep.
That's why I love this show. There's so many just very funny, like, quick lines like that they just don't draw too much attention to, but God, are they funny.
Yeah, and they tell a lot about the characters, especially as they're driving in and Hank locks the doors and rolls the windows up as they enter the city bounds of Dallas, middle of the highway, like anyone's going to try and rush him from that.
Listen, there's the Dallas roaming highway gangs are very dangerous, I'll have you know.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the Dallas gangs are running a contest to see if they can kill the most people. Someone's got to tell Hank Hill.
It's like Mad Max out there. They're all in their mowers trying to chase down people.
Was that the bite of 87?
Oh my fucking God.
So they get to the hotel. Do you have any notes from that point?
I don't have any notes, but I remember them meeting up with the coordinator for the hotel or for the event. And the way that they treat it is like Peggy is like the main person, like the actual competitor.
Yes.
And Hank is basically being treated like a child at a daycare.
He is... They treat the husbands as if they are babies that need occupying in an enclosure. And the fact that he is a coach barely changes anything.
Yeah, Hank is technically Peggy's coach, quote unquote, for this.
Yes.
But he's still basically being treated as like a child.
Yes.
In many ways. Like they're gonna learn to make wallets. But
Have you ever made a wallet?
you ever made a wallet?
But they, Peggy's name is on everything because she's the main character of this entire, spot, and Hank doesn't like that.
Oh yeah, the reservation is for Mr. and Mrs. Peggy Hill, and he starts slamming the concierge
I have
desk.
the fucking bell gag in my notes.
Yeah, he keeps slamming the desk so the bell keeps ringing, and every time the bell rings, another bellhop just runs in behind him.
Yeah, they
And it's
run in,
like
arms folded behind them, waiting patiently for his help. It gets like
10
12 of them?
Like 10 to 12 of them, yeah.
And they're all standing there staring at him, and he's having a fit, turns around, just screams, "What are you all waiting for? Get out of here!" All just standing there like statues.
It's such a good gag. It's
Such a good bit.
funny gag.
Immediately after that scene, we have a cut back to Luann and Bobby doing their B-plot.
Love their B-plot is very funny.
It's a very good B-plot, and it covers everything really well. It's so fucking funny, but the first note I have about it is Luann and Bobby are doing the SpongeBob paint episode.
It is. They are.
Yeah.
That's exactly. I was gonna say like the whole episode is their whole B-plot is one of the most mundane like stories you could tell, but it's told so funny in such a unique way that I love it.
Yeah.
And it's just the escalation of it is so perfect.
It's the fucking SpongeBob paint bubble episode.
It is. Except different ending, but yeah.
Yeah, the ending's great. We'll get there. I have no notes between that and the loser talk.
I don't think I. Oh, I do. the fire safety video with
Yes.
Chuck Mangione.
Oh my god, that opened up a whole rabbit hole for me.
Did you not know who Chuck Mangione is?
I didn't know that Chuck Mangione was a real man.
Yeah, he's a real artist.
He shows up a lot in King of the Hill, and he voices himself.
Yeah, he's a running gag that voices himself. I know there's a whole episode about him later on in the series.
Yes. I know that he shows up for extended periods further on, but I don't think he has a full role for the first couple seasons.
Yeah, I just remember that they constantly do Chuck Mangione gags.
And a lot of it is like joking about him being a failed artist and doing these kind of like niche efforts, which is funny.
I know later on they only play like one song of his constantly.
Yeah.
Every time he's mentioned, it's like the only song he's known for.
You know what's
like,
you know what the true comedy of all of this is?
What's that?
Do you know why he like signed the rights for his face to be used and like participate in King of the Hill?
No, why?
He explicitly joined King of the Hill because he wanted, quote, his music to reach a younger generation.
Oh my fucking god.
And they made sure that every appearance of him is to be the like weakest, least effectual like musician selling out possible in every single situation.
Because I love the fire safety video because he's so low energy the whole time.
Yeah.
It's so fucking funny for like those really bad like straight to VHS like celebrity endorsed safety videos from like the 80s and 90s.
And from what I understand, that is almost his exclusive position for the show going forward, is being the celebrity that sold out so goddamn hard that his name is
absolutely.
Dirt. And it's so goddamn funny that he joined just because he wanted his music to reach a new audience.
I never knew that about that's really funny. Holy shit.
I learned that looking up this episode, thinking like, wow, they talk about Chuck Mangione a lot. I wonder if he becomes relevant later. Oh, he's real? Oh, he looks like that.
Yeah, I know he was a real guy. I just thought they were like friends with like the production and they just kept him on as a running gag.
Nope, real dude. Real dude who came in with real, intentions, and then they just shat on him.
That's amazing.
So funny.
The next, do you remember the? Obviously you do, because it's the main point of the episode. The big boggle champion and like her husband coming in.
Yes,
that is a very stereotypical way to introduce a villain, but so funny at the same time.
So good. Because
I think the husband is the best subversion I've ever seen of like a side character, because he seems like such a pushover type like weird guy who takes this boggle coaching too seriously. Mm-hmm. But he also seems really reserved and quiet.
Yes.
And
you see the full extent of that at the final thing you hear from him.
Yeah. But do you remember when the first time that Hank goes back and like is sitting in, there's a specific area where the coaches have to sit and watch.
Yes.
Like where all the people are playing.
Oh god, yeah, and he's talking into that fucking tape recorder.
He's talking into a tape. Do you remember what he says?
The cubes are cold, something.
He says, note to self, good day for sometimes why.
Yes. God, yeah.
It's like that is one of the lamest things I've heard anyone ever say.
And it's about a game where you randomly jumble letters like you have any control over that.
I think that is the least cool thing I've ever heard a man say.
Yes.
Holy shit.
Yes.
But that's just kind of this whole episode is like everyone is doing the least cool thing ever, and yet it is the most high stakes thing these characters have gone through sometimes.
Yes. Oh my god. Of course the first day doesn't go well.
Yeah, Peggy gets shaken up because she goes against the champion first go.
She's too intimidated. She gets one word, darn, I think it is. Dang. So she gets no points. She gets sent to second to last place.
She has to play against the boggle playing chicken.
But she goes back to her hotel room and she is distraught. Yeah. And Hank...
She is like broken.
Yeah, and Hank is doing his absolute best to cheer her up in the worst way that anyone possibly could cheer someone up.
He's like, oh, I'll talk to you like I talk like our
my old coach had something he'd say to us to really rile us up and motivate us.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Like, what was it? You're a loser.
Your baby want a bottle?
Baby want a big dirt bottle? Why are you yelling at me?
Yeah, I'm just trying to be your coach.
Like, you made me feel worse now.
Like, that's what he told us when we went to state. And she responds with, "You went to state and lost."
We later find out that his team didn't score a single goal. They lost like 72 to nothing.
Oh, it was so bad. It's just like, that is the most brutal line I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's like you went to state and lost. It's like, oh fuck.
Neatly sandwiched between lines like, oh, you're smarter than me. He's like, oh, great. I'm smarter than
Oh,
the propane
thanks.
salesman. Well, you're smarter than anyone in Arlen. Oh, great. I'm the smartest hillbilly from Hillbilly Town.
Yeah. And of course, interconnected with all these scenes of Peggy being distraught about Boggle is Bobby and Luann trying to keep the house from getting fucked up by a single stain.
Yeah,
and slowly becoming worse and worse.
It starts with a small water stain on the coffee table, which I'm pretty sure you do not see in almost any scene in that room
Nope,
in a
it's gone.
previous episode. It exists solely for this moment. And escalates to an entire house deep cleaning and like to the point of like repainting the crown molding.
Yep.
Oh my God.
I think the favorite thing is like they got like a paint can of varnish.
Yes.
For just the little ring that they did with the water damage.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like oh, it's almost perfect. And then of course, like you said, the SpongeBob moment.
Yeah. A single
of
drop.
A single drop of varnish hitting the carpet, and then everything just spirals out of control from there.
Yep. They try to like steam vacuum it up, but it won't go, and the rug catches on the cleaner, and that burns the motor out in the machine, and that causes a short in the wall, which puts a very small soot stain on the wallpaper, and they panic about that.
Oh boy, it is just a constant barrage of just what the fuck is happening.
Yes. I should note also, before they left, Peggy explicitly said that these two plainest people in the world should not have a party while, the parents are out.
Bobby and Luann should not be throwing a party. The most milquetoast white bread people I've ever seen.
Yeah, Bobby is satisfied to sit on his ass on the floor and watch TV drinking plain water.
He's drinking water, watching the Chuck Mangione fire safety
Yes,
video.
yeah, that's right. But back to the hotel.
Peggy starts going back at it, and she starts climbing the ranks. She's determined to get back to the top of the game.
And she is fully confident that Hank is behind her the whole way.
Yeah, Hank is definitely watching from the coaching room and definitely trying to make sure that Peggy's gonna beat them all, and he's at the mower convention with his friends.
Yep. He decided to skip the coach room, go join his friends at the mower convention. They make a Liberace joke, which is very funny in the context of the time.
I was like, Liberace mower, what a fucking reference.
I think I wrote down, has anyone thought of Liberace in 10 years?
Exactly. I do like the gag of they took the flash picture and blinded them all.
Yeah, just this rhinestone-encrusted writing lawnmower.
Yeah. Of course, Boomhauer loses his VR fingers to the fake mower.
Oh, that's right. I wrote down, Boomhauer experiences modern gaming to a level of immersion that nobody even has now.
Yeah, shocking realism for a game, for a supposed VR
For what is
experience
like,
in
what
the
was
90s.
that Virtual Boy? That was
Yeah,
it?
basically.
Yeah. He was in one of those on a riding lawnmower and somehow he gets a very immersive experience. One that is reflected in modern gaming, by the way. That is how you play fucking Farming Simulator.
Oh god, is it you can reach down and like lose your fingers?
Not exactly, but that just means that Boomhauer's having an even more immersive experience than modern gaming.
I was like, wow, really? Goddamn, these games are more immersive than I gave them credit for.
But that's the thing, right? Back then, nobody thought, oh, they're going to make games about riding a lawnmower. And now they do every single year.
And people just eat them up.
Yeah. Boomhauer was really living the life. He was in 2024 while everyone was in 1997.
And he was feeling the same experience that those people in like the 20s that saw that train on the first movie felt. When they're like, oh, the train is literally going to come through the screen. Oh my god.
That dude was like immersed in witchcraft like no one will ever be. He loved it until he ain't got no fingers.
Until he ain't got no fingers.
Someone get the rock out of the way.
I will say this episode like reawakened a childhood memory from me.
Oh yeah?
One of the commentators, the two people that are like commentating over the whole tournament, the dude with the weird accent, every time he said the word Bensel, like Bensel.
Oh god, yeah, I have just pencils.
Yeah, he kept saying like Bensel
Pencil.
with like
Pencil.
yeah, with like the emoji, the red and white the B emoji.
Yes.
The way he kept saying
Pencil.
it. I remember saying that as a kid.
Yes.
I remember seeing this episode and repeating the way he said that because it made me laugh every time.
Yes.
That was like one of those moments of like, oh god, I have seen this.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I remember this.
I'm gonna try and put that clip in the podcast because I liked that a lot. I wrote it down. It's just pencils.
Pencils.
Pencils. I want to note earlier on when Peggy is, setting up for her boggle and finding her groove again, she brings out a series of like good luck charms, one of which is a picture of her family, one of which is a troll doll,
Yeah.
which I guess are advertised as good luck trolls. That was the brand.
Yeah.
And one of them was the U-bend pipe that Hank bought himself to occupy his time while she
That's
was
right.
at the Arlen tournament. He was he was just running around like finding shit to do while she was in the tournament, and he didn't know what to do, and he just says, "Oh, well, I bought a U-bend. I don't have anything else to do to waste time." And she pulls it out of her purse as a good luck charm as she's playing Boggle. She moves it to every single table.
That's a really funny moment of like, oh, they were really paying attention to this random gag they did.
Yeah.
The rest of the episode is kind of formulaic. Like, oh, of course Peggy's gonna fucking win.
Yeah.
It's
not without struggle.
It's still struggle, and it's a moment of Hank realizing he needs to go back and actually be her coach.
Yes.
He wears that really shitty Boggle coach shirt.
Yep.
But
not without Peggy having her struggles, namely her pencil breaking and her finding a way to sharpen it in the most Arlen, Texas way possible.
Yeah, I didn't remember that until I watched it, where she just puts the broken pencil in her mouth and fucking chews it like a gopher.
Yeah, until it's sharp enough, and she carries on because she is full of piss and vinegar. She's gonna win, goddammit.
I remember seeing that, and I was like, I don't remember that ever happening in this show. I'm just like, ugh, can't even imagine.
Mm-hmm. And there is after Hank shows up and gives her a pencil after her last one breaks, because of course she's writing too hard because she's nervous. After pencils. I notice a weird thing. I don't have a clip for this. I'll do it for the podcast.
Right.
There is a scene that I think they animated and then later flipped, because Peggy gets her pencil and then it's an over-the-shoulder shot of her writing things down, but she's writing with her right hand but writing right to left, backwards.
Oh, weird.
So if you were to flip it, it would suggest that she was left-handed writing correctly.
So maybe the clip was initially her writing with her left hand the correct way, but they realized that she's a righty.
All other shots show her as a righty, so I guess they just flipped it in post.
Oh, maybe that's weird. I didn't notice that. It's a good call.
Yeah, I'll take a clip and send it later, and I'll put it on the podcast. But it was a weird little thing I noticed, is that she was writing backwards, which was very fucking funny.
That's just another one of those moments of this first season has a lot of really weird animation.
Yeah, it was a skeleton crew getting this first season going. They hadn't proven themselves yet.
You got to get it out the door to prove you're even worthy to have multiple seasons.
Yeah, honestly, going through this first season, one of my favorite things, as you've probably guessed from my previous outbursts in previous podcast episodes, is just finding where shit gets weird.
No, I agree. There's a really
You remember the buffet scene with those guys trapped against the wall?
Oh, of course. There's just such a rustic charm to this show. It's
it's aggressively handmade.
Yeah. This is the perfect encapsulation of just a small group of people working to make something they thought was really funny.
Yeah. So that was that moment. And she wins.
She wins. And we see the reaction of both coaches, both the champion and Peggy's coach.
Yep. As her opponent, the previous 9-time state champion, is walking out crying. Non-consecutive years, that's right. Is running out crying. Her coach, previously kind of a
soft-spoken,
maybe timid, but very serious about his job. As they're leaving, he's screaming at her, "Loser, you're a loser!" with the same script.
Sorry for yourself.
Same script that Hank was using.
And it's that. That's a good enough joke to end on, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember what Hank says right at the end?
Yes. Hank looks to her and says, "There's something that the coach said he'd do if we ever won."
She goes, "What's that?" I'm like, "What?"
And he leans in to kiss her.
And I wrote down, "There's something Coach said he would do if we ever won the big game," and then in all quotes, I'm like, "Then kisses her. What did Hank mean by this?"
I just wrote down, "Coach would kiss them boys."
I'm just like, Hank, what did you mean by this, bro?
In the most generous of terms, it would be the coach saying, "If you win, I could kiss you."
Yeah,
But also it's so much funnier that Hank leans in for a full, married for so many years, pretty
I
heavy
love you.
kiss.
You mean so much to me. Kiss.
Yeah, it's like,
Oh,
coach,
my
maybe maybe you got to chill out a little bit,
Hey,
coach.
hey, maybe we need a new coach. Just saying.
Good God.
It is definitely not the worst episode of the season. It is a perfectly serviceable, fine episode.
Yes.
I don't think it's a bad episode to like showcase Peggy as a character. I think it's obviously, I mean, honestly, I think it's a really good episode to show her quirks,
Yes.
to show that she's a little weird, but not in a bad way.
It shows a lot of her competitive streak and also how easily unnerved she is.
Yeah,
She clearly suffers with anxiety, and that plays into something in another in the next episode, actually.
yeah, the next episode.
But it's a good window into Peggy and her more complicated character traits. Because up until now, she's been mostly characterized as a gossip and someone who thinks she's better at cooking than she is.
We're not at the point where characters are getting flanderized down to their worst essentials yet.
No.
Where like we see characters just be like the terrible quirky mom type thing.
The only person we get that from is Bill.
Well, yeah.
And we'll get to Bill. He hasn't had his own episode yet.
Bill gets the worst of it later on. He is a extremely sad character. I feel so bad for him every time.
Your wife divorced you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So that was episode.
That was episode 9.
That was episode 7 through 9.
Do we want to give this like a little? Obviously, we're gonna keep recording, but do you want to give this a little bit of a roundabout? Like, hey, see you in the next one. We're gonna split this into 2, or do we want to just keep going and make this one giant 6-episode review?
Well, I mean,
you
we're gonna
feeling?
split it. We're gonna split it up, but I could just leave that in.
Okay, bye.
What you just said. See you next time, everybody.
I've hit the record.
All right. I don't know if us attempting to sync has ever helped me in like editing this later,
I mean,
but I feel like we should.
So here's what you do. We both do the clap, and then we just pause for a few seconds, and that lets it sync up properly. Like we don't like
Okay.
we clap and then don't say anything for like 2 or 3 seconds, and then that's when we're good.
Okay. Are you ready then?
I'm ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
I mean, it's off sync, but now we haven't. It's fine now. Once you put those together,
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
It's fine.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hold it in. All right. Well, that's how it usually goes.
Yeah, that's how it usually starts.
Thanks.
This isn't a
Thanks, Discord.
a professional operation. We're just flying by the seat of our pants at this point.
We were professionals. We'd be in the ocean right now, buddy.
I'd be finished. We're so good at this.
So good at this. Both of us are clearly professionals.
Oh, so good.